when I try to explain to you, like, we are literally watching fascism unfold, and I don't mean like, oh, you're a fascist because you're a Republican. Like, I'm talking about old school, straight up, definitional, ultra nationalist fascism. This is what I mean. I think we'll continue with our news coverage here and move on to the unconscionable war crimes that Israel is engaging in. Visions of hell. Wait, what? The Atlantic said published justification for the murder of Palestinian children today? That's not surprising. That's cool, man. Thank you to the Atlantic.
The Israeli airstrikes hit a small area of prefabricated huts surrounded by desert just after evening.
The editor-in-chief is a former IOF soldier? No. The editor-in-chief is a former Israeli occupying force jailer. Not just any kind of soldier, but also one that operated the Palestinian detention facilities. So it's even worse than just like a regular soldier. And it's a pretty bad... Being a soldier in general in the IDF is like one of the worst things you can be. And there's like 8 different groups of people that are like a little bit worse than that. And he hits that one. He's like the torture guy.
Prayers last night.
Yeah, also, this conversation is so idiotic. Thank you, Central Committee, for bringing this up. I keep forgetting to mention this. Israel's trying to form an alliance with Saudi Arabia, which is a non-democratic, theocratic monarchy, as a matter of fact, ruling under a radical Wahhabism, which is far-right Sunni sect. It's not like they give a shit about religious extremism. They just want Palestine's land. Thank you. You're absolutely correct on this. They just want all the Palestinians there to die. They want them to get the away. They want them to go away. They want their lives to be miserable, so they leave, or they die if they don't leave. That's it. They're trying to provoke you, so you'll end up misspeaking or say a trigger phase. Then they'll clip you. Don't fall for it. Yeah. We'll look at the Christian Elmon per piece in a little bit. The notion that Hamas are bad because they're bad is stupid. Here in Algeria, the FLN, Front de Libération Nationale, was also labeled as a terrorist organization by the French occupation and their European allies. Now it's praised as a symbol of freedom. It's always the same shit. Yes, that's why I said the IRA as well. The IRA, the FLN, and also Mandela's party as well. Okay? The Viet Cong. Yeah. The ANC, the Viet Cong, the IRA. Every single instance. It is so weird that every single instance where there is a liberatory group, there's an emancipatory force that actually is violently trying to engage in an act of revolution, trying to violently engage in an act of emancipation, violently resisting against an unimaginable, untold amount of violence caused by the occupying entity under the legal structure designed by the Western world. They are always the enemies. They're always the terrorists. They're always the bad guys. Okay? They're always the bad guys. You think Nazi Germany didn't consider the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising to be bad? Conducted by the bad guys? Of course they did. So in many ways, it becomes a much simpler equation. You have to look at a situation and go, who's right here? And if roles were reversed, you would understand who's right. Okay? If it was an Arab Muslim country dominating 6 million Jews and locking them in concentration camps, locking them in a apartheid structure where there are 2 tiers, and then maybe every now and then they'll have one Jewish person on like a political position, as they did in Nazi Germany as well, by the way. You have to remember that. Okay? And then they turn around and go, hey, guess what, dude? It's actually what apartheid? What are you talking about? As they bomb one of the concentration camps, as they bomb one of the open-air prisons where almost 2.5 million Jews live, where they have the population registry, where they literally have complete access to their water, their electricity, all matter of commerce. And those 2 million Jews living in that open-air prison rely on international aid to survive, where the unemployment is at like 60%. There is 24/7 drone surveillance. And the Arab Muslim country that's doing this would get all matter of like support from these massive countries, these dominating hegemonic superpowers that are just giving them all the weapons to do so, you would know exactly what's going on there because a similar thing happened.
A Hamas official confirmed that 2 senior commanders targeted by Israel were killed.
This chart is cognizant of a weird coalition that occurred in the 1940s. Wonder why America's there? Weird. Because we are the #1 funders and facilitators of fascism. Grinspan, a Jewish militant, killed the German ambassador in France in response to what Germany did. He was tried as a terrorist, and Nazis used to justify more oppression.
But there's no doubt that Palestinian civilians were also among the dead and injured. Israel claims it used precise munitions and that its intelligence assessment prior to this strike was that what it called uninvolved civilians would not be hurt. But dozens were taken to field hospitals, including these children, prompting expressions of outrage from some European leaders. Just days after the UN's top court ordered Israel to stop the violence.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy that the international community was like, hey man, you're like kind of out of control here. Perhaps you should stop being so violent in Rafah specifically. And Israel's answer to that was, no, thank you. As a matter of fact, I will not be doing that. And I will get even more violent than you ever could have imagined. It's great. Thank you.
What kind of conscience and religion does this? What kind of humanity? Where is the world? Where is the Islamic nation?
During the night, we received a total of 28 people who were dead on arrival and 180 wounded who were then stabilized and referred to the very few remaining medical structures within the area.
Daylight brought children searching among the charred ruins for anything of any value, because these people have almost nothing. The UN says over 800,000 Palestinians have fled the fight.
The BBC should show the headless beheaded baby that the father was carrying, and then show the tweets in the Telegram channel chats where Zionists were calling the headless baby a charred chicken nugget, and all the memes were saying they were chickens for sale for 1 shekel. Dude, there's no way to... Guys, I'm telling you, when I try to explain to you, like, we are literally watching fascism unfold. And I don't mean like, oh, you're a fascist because you're a Republican. Like, I'm talking about old school, straight up, definitional, ultra-nationalist fascism. This is what I mean. Okay? This is it. This is it. People love to think about like, people love to dream about like, oh yeah, dude, no, I'd be so in times like in former instances of like American violence, I'd be on the right side of history for sure, bro. It's like, no, you wouldn't, because you're doing that right now. Aaron Bushnell was correct. Dare you compare other genocides to this one? This one is a much slower burn than other genocides. That is the truth.
In the last 3 weeks alone, the Israelis say this was not a designated area to where civilians could evacuate, though it was certainly close to one. And having been displaced so many times, many dared believe they were at last safe.
We were displaced to the city of Rafah because they said it was safe. We were in our tents, ready to sleep, and I was trying to take care of my brother when we heard a big explosion and fire broke out, and people started screaming.
Yesterday, I pulled out the remains of 5 children and about 3 women, all in pieces, and none of them could be identified.
Why is Israel getting so much condemnation from Europe? Is it because of the ICC? Why is there such a difference in reaction compared to when Israel had already killed like 30,000 Palestinians in the first 3 months of the conflict? I don't just get it. Guys, there's a reason why. Listen. If you're kind of unfamiliar with the way that Zionism is operated, and I think many like former Zionists who are now anti-Zionists in this chat will actually remember this most likely. If you haven't been paying a lot of attention, you will notice that 75% of the UN condemnations, something like an insane amount of United Nations condemnations, are directed towards Israel, okay? And none of them are actually enforceable because every single one of them has been vetoed by the Security Council. The UN has no power outside of the Security Council. You have the UNGA, the General Assembly, which all countries are a part of, and then you have the Security Council. The Security Council has rotating countries, and then it has 5 countries that are always permanent members, the real permanent members of the UN Security Council, okay? And the United States of America in the Security Council is consistently the #1 defender of Israel and has consistently voted on whatever the Israel wants, and it's consistently voted to strike down any kind of condemnation. So the UN has always been very critical of Israel, and many Zionists will tell you for years and years that's the reason why they've always said UN is actually very anti-Semitic. It's so anti-Semitic. The number one Zionist argument has always been, why so much criticism against Israel? Why Israel? Why not any of these other countries that are doing their own versions of war crimes? That is the #1 argument that I've heard from Zionists for years and years and years and years, okay? Now they've obviously elevated that to directly being like UN is Hamas, but that's straight up an old school Zionist take. The only reason is because America defends Israel. So none of those condemnations ever amounted to anything, okay? The major difference is now, beyond those condemnations, the world is paying attention. Young people are paying attention. That's the major issue right now. And that's why there's a lot more pressure, and that's why these international organs are feeling like they have some kind of momentum. They feel galvanized. They see what is going on and can actually take action. The other side of this equation, of course, is obviously Israel's own personal behavior, its own personal conduct thus far. Israel has gone above and beyond. There has never been a siege that has been this violent, this brutal, this bloody. Okay? Israel has done mowing of the lawn operations time and time again in the Gaza Strip. It always is the same exact situation, okay? There's a ceasefire. There is a Hamas follows on the conditions of said ceasefire since the pullout. There's a ceasefire that is agreed upon. Then Israel starts brutalizing the Palestinian population in the West Bank. Hamas says, yo, cut that shit out. We're going to lob some rockets. Okay? Then Israel says, lol, okay, good luck. And then continues brutalizing the Palestinians in the West Bank. Hamas throws a couple rockets or maybe like takes an IDF soldier hostage or whatever. And then Israel turns around and engages in a siege. They siege Gaza. They kill a shit ton of people, a couple thousand people here and there. They blow up a bunch of buildings. And then they turn around and inevitably arrive at yet another ceasefire for a couple years. And in that ceasefire period, while many Americans are not paying attention, while many Israelis are not paying attention, the Israeli government is still very much operating in the exact same violent and brutal ways. The apartheid, that is, of course, whether it be in the Gaza Strip, implementing unimaginable trade restrictions, putting the Palestinians on a caloric deficit that they openly say is putting them on a diet. And on the West Bank, they have the military occupation. No state with contiguity for Palestinians on their own ancestral homeland that the United Nations literally told them this is your thing. Actually insane that they can just get away with all of this like nothing is happening. I just don't understand. It is because of the United States of America that they can get away with this like there is nothing happening. We give them the weapons and we give them the political cover. That's it. This is precisely why I say America bad, okay? That's it. That's it. There's no way that they get to do this without American support.
The scale of what happened last night has forced Israel's Prime Minister into calling this a tragic mistake.
In Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non-combatant residents. And despite our utmost efforts not to harm non-combatants, something, unfortunately, went tragic.
Yeah, it's a tragic mistake. A tragic mistake. I never thought that this would happen. Oh. Meanwhile, as Netanyahu is like, it's a tragic mistake, his mouthpiece is celebrating the Rafah attack. Like it's a Lag BaOmer bonfire. Of course. Tragic mistake, by the way. Oh, dude. Oh, yes. Thank you. Hasanabi. I literally thought you were going to use this as an opportunity to serve a 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour. So thank you for actually sending me, not that, but instead, the actual thing that the Israeli Defense Force tweeted last night. Oh my God. Which, by the way, at the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break. I'm going to do that right now. Obviously, I'm going to serve that right now. But this is the other aspect of this. This is the other aspect of this that I have to mention, which is that the IDF did exactly the same fucking bullshit that they do every time. Every time, dude. They immediately came out with a justification for it. It's so strange, dude. It's so strange. Perhaps that is why more knowledgeable people in the immediate aftermath of the Al Ahly attack was like, hold on, I don't think this is a exploded ordinance, even though it kind of looks a little weird. And everyone was like, wait, but Israel said they didn't blow up the hospital. I was like, bro, they fucking blew up the hospital 2 days prior. What are you talking about? The do you mean? And they've blown up every hospital since then. Remember that. Anyway, the 3-minute ad break is here. So what's up? Last night, the Israeli Air Force site carried out an intelligence-based precise strike targeted senior Hamas terrorist Intal as Sultan. Contrary to Hamas's lies and misinformation, the strike did not take place in the Al-Mawasi humanitarian area. This is the area where the strike actually happened. Calm down. Your haters would love to clip this. Wait, what? What did I say? I didn't say anything that, like... Yeah, only hours before Netanyahu decided to claim the strike was a mistake, the IDF edited the humanitarian zone again, the one they had unilaterally declared to say refugee tents they struck in Rafah were not a part of it. Okay? So just something to consider here. There is no amount of cruelty or brutality or violence that Israel won't do. And there's no amount of lies that they won't tell. That's it. Since October 7, there have been unironically less real statements that the organs of communication and propaganda from the Israeli government have made than lies. If you look at all of the statements that they offer for one truthful sentiment that they express, there is 700 lies. Every single thing. Now, that's not unique to Israel. That's what every government does, okay? The one thing, however, that is unique to Israel, okay? The one thing, because, like, dude, come on. I'm an American citizen, okay? It's like listening to the State Department yap about, like, weapons of mass destruction and then justify an untold amount of cruelty that we subject the rest of the planet to. That's their job. That's what the government does, okay? So don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying like some anti-Semitic shit, which is what a lot of people immediately get into a defensive posture against and go, oh, you must be saying this because, oh, they're Jews. They lie all the time, right? No, motherfucker. They're the government. Of course they're going to lie. The difference, however, with the way and the consistency in which Israel lies is that they don't even put effort into it. It blows my mind. That's why it's partially laughable that people say, oh, Jews control Hollywood, Jews control the world. Motherfucker, look at them. Look at these Jews in Israel. What happened? They can't even fuck together a decent, halfway decent lie. What happened? What, do they not have like a single marketing manager? What's going on? Do they not have like an Ogilvy guy there? It doesn't make any sense. They literally would just be like, yeah, guys, they're terrorists. They're terrorists. They're terrorists. And here's why. Okay? Here's why. It's because they don't need to. Because America has nestled Israel in its bosom. Okay? That's why they don't think they need to lie adequately. That is the reason. It is basically the worst propaganda I've ever seen. There's no, like, dude, even when the pipeline blew up, like, the only thing I can think of is, like, when America tried to be like, Russia must have blown up its own pipeline. Do you remember that? That was, like, an instance where I was like, come on, dude. Come on. Like, that's crazy. Okay. What are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, there was a mass blast where the American government was like, yeah, the Russia probably blew up its own pipeline. We don't know who did it. Definitely not our allies. And it was just like, dude, you're on autopilot. Are you fucking serious? You couldn't come up with something better than that? Like, you know what would have made more sense if you said like the orcas did it, you know? Oh God, I hate this disgusting groiper Nazi freak literally everywhere. Thank you, Elon Musk. You are so great. I swear to God, if I was literally 10% more conspiratorial, I would say that this is a psyop to make it seem like every single Palestinian defender is actually just straight up a Nazi, because that's the most visible aspects on Twitter of like Palestinian emancipation is almost always like the Jake Shield type. It's just like, it's so gross, dude. It's crazy how the whole Elon plus ADL partnership ended up with every report of open anti-Semitism on the platform getting immediately dismissed by the supposed safety team on Twitter. Spoiler alert, is just boss now. Yeah. AOC says the idea of attack on a tent camp of innocents in Rafah is an indefensible atrocity. This was done in open defiance of POTUS's red line and the ICJ's call for a ceasefire. It is long past time for the president to live up to his word and suspend military aid. That's right. That's great. AOC acting like Biden has a genuine red line. Bro, what do you mean? That's like phenomenal political pressure being conducted literally from the right. She is a congressperson. What are we talking about? Yeah, of course, dude. That's what you're supposed to say when you are literally a part of the government in the Democratic Party. What are you talking about? That's her job. She's doing her job. She's doing it in the right way as well. Of course, we know that Biden's red line is like ridiculous. It's copium. You know it is. Oh my God. You don't understand anything about applying political pressure from inside of the party. Guys, if you're anti-electoralist, just don't care about AOC. That's it. And move on. I don't know why I have to constantly hear from people who are like, I'm not going to vote. I don't care about voting. I'm actually going to magically wish for the socialist revolution to occur as a consequence of the internal contradictions of capitalism. It's going to fall apart and socialism will magically happen. If that's your opinion, okay, or if your opinion is that like, no, I'm a part of a Marxist-Leninist vanguard party and we're going to literally seize a forward operating base right now. We're on our way. If that's your take, then don't care about AOC. That's it. It's not for you. This conversation is not for you. It's for like millions of Americans who do actually think of AOC as like somewhat of a radical figure, but I like her because she's young. And it's seemingly on my side when it comes to the interests. On my side when it comes to like, some good ideas. She got some good ideas. They're saying Biden doesn't have a red line. No, of course I know Biden doesn't have a red line. They're telling that to me. Okay? You think I don't know that? I just said Biden keeps magically cutting the red line exactly around whatever Israel is doing. There is something very different about me having an opinion on this and AOC making a public statement as a very popular congressional representative in the Democratic Party. Okay? Of course, this is a very appropriate mechanism for pushback. That is the type of shit that actually gets her broad coverage. That is how she can go to CNN and talk to Jake Tapper, because she doesn't call Jake Tapper a cunt like I do, okay? Even though Jake Tapper is a... Do you understand? What do you want? What do you want her to say? Be like, yeah, we need to off with Biden's head. Yeah. Fake Tapper. That was so good. Can you explain more why Israel is Israel's fascist? I always have trouble arguing this point. Okay, let's do this very quickly. Are you ready for this? Let's say, what is fascism? Okay, let's Google that. Let's start there. Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interests for the perceived good of the nation or race. Now, this is the Wikipedia definition, which is like, not great, right? It's not great. However, having said that, Israel and Zionism in general as an ideology hits almost every single marker on this list. If you were to look at, let's say, Umberto Eco's like your Ur-fascism or the 14 tenets, where is it? Ultranationalism, combined with the myth of national rebirth, is a key foundation of fascism. Robert Paxton argues that a passionate nationalism is the basis of fascism, combined with a conspiratorial and Manichaean view of history, which holds that the chosen people have been weakened by political parties, social classes, unassimilable minorities, spoiled rentiers, and rationalist thinkers. Roger Griffin, and this is the best definition for the record of fascism, much better than the other thing that they were talking about, identifies the core of fascism as being palingenetic ultranationalism. What does that mean? Palingenetic ultranationalism. It means that one group of people that has been ordained, that has been decided on as the in-group, the powerful in-group, engages in an unimaginable, untold amount of violence to those who are on the out-group. Okay? And there is a mythology that you basically build around this in-group. For Israel, the in-group is the Jewish population. Okay? And the history and the national mythos surrounding the development of Israel and the continuation of the Israeli apartheid is, which by the way, this is the foundational plank of Zionism, is the 3,000-year history of Jews in the land that they consider Israel, that they think is theirs, okay? And no amount of cruelty to the outgroup, Palestinians, whether they are Christian or Muslim, doesn't matter, but Palestinians broadly, is seen as too much because it's 3,000 years of national mythos. It's 3,000 years of history. How dare you? And this doesn't mean that there is no real part of Israeli history, or not Israeli history, sorry, Jewish history, that understandably causes frustration and fear. There is a lot of trauma, okay? There is a lot of trauma in the Jewish past. And it's not just the Holocaust either. We're talking about pogroms. Jews have always been historically considered, even when we were talking about like villagers, okay? They were like, oh shit, the well doesn't have like adequate water. Our children are dying. Who's to blame? Oh, it must be the Jews, my lord. Okay? Literally, anytime some shit goes wrong, they're like, it's Jews. Jews did it. Jews did it. For 3,000 years, no matter what. So there is an aspect of shared Jewish culture and shared Jewish history that also legitimizes some of these fears, okay? That like if there isn't a Jewish ethno-state, we are going to get Holocaust again. We're going to get Holocausted again, okay? So that actually, in my opinion, makes it even harder to shake a lot of people off this position. Not that it matters, though, at the end of the day, because there aren't that many Jews on the planet. 15 million total. 6 million in the United States of America, or even larger number than that. There's 6 million in Israel, sorry. Okay? So this conversation, even if all Jews magically decided to be anti-Zionists, the most rabid anti-Zionists, would still be happening on the same boundaries, because you know who the number one defenders of Israel is? The number one defenders of the Zionist fascism are? It's Christians. And it always has been Christians. It's American evangelical Christians that are literally 10x the number of Jews in general. And this is, weirdly enough, something that we never discuss.
Today, Israel.
Oh, double down news, Israel fascism. Okay, I hope that one guy, that one chatter who asked me, like, how do I describe the concepts like of Zionism being fascist is a little bit better equipped. I hope that was like a little bit more helpful for you. And if it wasn't helpful for you, I hope it was helpful for others. Translating Israeli tweets like discovering a lost page from Mein Kampf theory confirmed yet again. Literal Nazis, and I mean that with the full sincerity of the word. What exactly are you stressed about? I will repeat again. In Gaza, you should not leave a living soul. Children, women, old men. Everyone should be killed. Every impure soul born in this rotten and poisonous land should be removed from the world. Holy shit, dude. It's just like, normally, there are a lot of people that are just like at the edges, right? Normally, if someone showed this to me, okay, if someone showed this to me and we're like, this is how every Zionist is like, I'd be like, I don't know. But right now, that is what Zionism has become. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're a liberal Zionist or not. This is what Zionism is right now. Okay? However, Murat? No, don't bark. Hey, you're barking. You're riling her up. It's my brother riling Kaya up. Kaya, come here. Come here, my baby. Oh my God. Hello. Hello. Did you wake up? Did you wake up? Oh, baby. Anyway, getting back to just man-made horrors beyond comprehension. We'll talk more about Israeli Zionism. We'll talk more about Zionism and why it's fascist in a bit. I do want to cover this Rafah situation. I haven't been able to continue. It's scary that genuinely more people are becoming more anti-Semitic because they're seeing Zionist freaks saying this shit. Yes, but you have to remember, this is why this community and myself, I will always maintain the position, because it's true, that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. Zionism cynically uses Judaism as both a shield and a weapon. But 3,000 years of Jewish history, okay, as an ethno-religion and Jewish culture in general, is exactly the opposite of the interest that Zionism presents. And this is not like a theological justification for it. I'm not talking about the Neturei Karta angle here about how until the Messiah comes, the Jews are a nationless people, and then they'll magically have a state or whatever. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking about 3,000 years of death and destruction and resistance against oppressive structures. That is the culture and history of Judaism, infinitely more than what this last 75-year Zionist bullshit has been. That is precisely the reason why originally, as we showed yesterday or 2 days ago, in World War II, in the lead up to World War II in Nazi Germany, a big chunk of the German movement against Nazism was conducted by trade unionists, socialists, communists alike, many of which were Jews. That's why the late, great Michael Jamal Brooks used to say that it is his Jewish values that guide him and teach him to resist apartheid, to resist Zionism. So it is my position that Zionism, of course, doesn't represent all Jews. Jews are not a monolith. No one is a monolith, okay? And Zionism certainly does not represent all Jews. And as a matter of fact, it is literally the antithetical values that have been cynically put in place by those who want to maintain a ethno-state and take over the entire land in that area, that have literally rewrote Jewish values and Jewish history for the past 75 years and have done it in such a successful way that it is virtually, especially impossible for many people who are directly victims of Zionist suppression, the apartheid, but it is even, it's getting harder and harder for people even in the Western world to separate the two. And I think this is a very dangerous prospect. It's a very dangerous prospect for Jews in general, okay? Not being able to see that Israel is completely separate from Judaism as a whole and Jewish people as a whole is a very dangerous prospect, because the more people start recognizing that Israel is a violent, barbaric ethno-state and an apartheid, when it's not doing a unimaginable, untold amount of ethnic cleansing to the Palestinian population, that's the good stuff. That's the peaceful times for Israel. The more people recognize that, and the more all of those instances of Israel cynically tying Judaism to their righteous cause, the harder it gets for people to separate the two. Because people are not very good at critical thinking, okay? As a whole, we're very dumb. We're not very smart. So when someone is saying no, dude, I'm doing this ethnic cleansing for Judaism, people are going to go, okay, I guess he's doing it for Judaism. Well, I don't know. And especially if you've never met an anti-Zionist Jew or never even met a Jewish person at all, as many people living in relatively segregated communities have never met a Jewish person. Not a lot of Jewish people out there in general, right? And certainly not in like heartland America in the middle of the country and shit, unless they are rabid evangelicals who are anti-Semitic, by the way, in many instances, but pro-Israel. You're going to start going, okay, I guess this is just a Jewish thing. And it is shocking to me. It is shocking to me that more people do not recognize this. It is shocking to me that more people don't go, uh-oh, this is not good. Like when you have, okay, when you have the Apartheid Defense League, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, as they called themselves, making statements about like the UN condemning Israel, or making statements about the ICC prosecuting Benjamin Netanyahu, you are literally actively saying like anti-Semitism. I don't give a shit about that at all. I care about Israel and Israel only, okay? And people see that. But why are so many white nationalists that are pro-Israel? I don't understand it genuinely. Don't their hatred override their desire to be pro-Israel? A couple different reasons. Some white nationalists hate Jews more than they, I guess like marginally hate Jews more than they hate Muslims, and like that they have a ethno-state and are like, we want that as well, and are jealous that Israel gets to have an ethno-state and hate Jews in general. So that like rabid anti-Semitism kicks in. So they're anti-Israel. And then the broader white nationalist movement comprised of like the evangelicals that don't do the reading to become like avowed open Nazis and whatever. Those white nationalists, you know, the average, the real nefarious white nationalism that lives at the heart of the Republican Party, those guys, well, they love Israel. They're pro-Israel because of, one, theological reasons, like, you know, Israel, chosen sons and daughters of God, have to maintain all that land so that Jesus Christ can come back to earth in Megiddo and fight against the Muslim hordes. They also love Israel because, like, some people see Israel as like the stopgap. You know what I mean? They think that like Israel is like fighting against Islamic hordes in the middle of that region, and that's why they're a very valuable ally. You know, there's a multitude of different reasons. Some of them like that it's a apartheid again, that some of them are just straight up fascists, and they're like, I ride for fascism no matter who's doing it. They know the anti-Semitism charge is meritless, but normies who don't pay close attention are generically anti-bigotry. It's a way of poisoning the well so that people are scared of speaking out less. They be labeled a bigot. Yeah, except the difference is that shit is the reason why many progressives immediately after October 7th were like, whoa, I can't believe you. Are you saying that you're like pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism? What's happening here? Are you a little anti-Semitic? Did I not catch this? Right? Like, there's a reason for why that anti-Semitism, a cynical deployment of anti-Semitism for anyone who's an anti-Zionist worked for like a brief window of time, okay? Think about it this way. You're slowly seeing a lot more people trickle back into this community. Thank you for doing this. I'm Palestinian. Never thought the world would actually open their eyes to what is actually going on. Thanks for spreading the truth, brother. Yeah. One thing shared between Zionism and fascism is the central role of fear in society. This myth of ever-present, almost conspiratorial existential danger from minorities, i.e. the Arabs all want to kill us, which lets nationalism perpetuate itself uncritically. Like you said, Israel is distinct in that for Jews, there is real long history of repression as a powerless minority, though this time the power dynamics are reversed. Plus, of course, Islamophobia lets Zionist imagination run wild. Yeah. Oh, the other reason is because like a lot of the ultra-Zionist anti-Semites also just want Jews to go and live in the desert away from them. They're like, oh, I don't want you touching my money. Go over there. Like, that is another reason. And that's precisely the reason why this asshole that is on your screen right now, this asshole right here, up here, okay, Mr. Holocaust revisionist himself, can get away with aligning with open anti-Semitic fascists. Like Viktor Orban. How can he do that? Because it's perfect. It's like if Jews feel less safe in the Western world, they have to come to Israel, where they will magically be safe, I guess, except not really. The manufacturing of consent is happening in real time. Yeah, we will show you that in a second.
Wrong.
Let's continue.
We're investigating the incident and we'll reach conclusions because this is our policy.
But these Palestinians...
Honestly, I think that the fact that it took the Holocaust to even bring an actual sizable amount of Jews on board with the Zionist project, even though it had been around for like 50 years at that point, shows how removed it is from practical Jewish culture. Yes. Yeah, I mean, Jews were very resistant to Zionism initially. Like, and I don't think there's ever been a point in history, where there were more Jewish Zionists than there were Christian Zionists, even at the inception. Okay? Like, there's never been more Jewish Zionists in totality than there are Christian Zionists, always.
Palestinians accompanying bodies for burial say the Israelis are liars and that condemnation from the International Court of Justice is meaningless. The situation in Gaza was described by one aid worker today as beyond catastrophic, though it never seems catastrophic enough to force Israel into changing course.
Well, I've been speaking to Sam Rose, who's the Director of Planning at the UN's Agency for Palestinians, UNRWA. He heard last night's strike from around 2 miles away in Al-Mawasi, where he's helping coordinate the humanitarian effort. I asked him for his reaction to what's happened.
Absolutely. I mean, this incident is particularly sickening, given the images, but also given the circumstances and the fact that so many women and children were killed, suffering horrific burns, but also being killed through shrapnel wounds. And I mean, it feels like we plumb new depths almost every day with what we see. But yeah, really, really heartbreaking, really sickening.
What do you make of the way the information comes out, or what can we read from that? In that, at first, Israel explained the attack and explained that they were targeting particular members of Hamas, and it's taken a few hours, but now they've said this was a tragic error.
I mean, we've seen attack after attack. We're at now 36,000 people killed, the majority women and children, given the breakdown of the population. So tragically, this is one incident amongst many, around 100 people killed in other parts of the Gaza Strip overnight, we understand, at least according to the figures of the Ministry of Health. I mean, what appears to have happened on this, and I can't comment on Israeli military strategy or communications, is it's the almost universal outcry and horror of this coming on top of everything else and the circumstances in which it happened. A camp of civilians, a camp of largely women and children who've been forced to flee to these areas anyway, been assured that these areas were part of a safe humanitarian zone, and coming so close to the ruling from the International Court of Justice, the highest judicial body in the UN, calling for a halt to the conflict. This is what we've seen.
Israel also says it did kill Hamas leaders in this attack. Does that mean it is routine that Hamas is mixing in the civilian population, even in areas that are supposed to be for internally displaced people?
I mean, these are very, very crowded areas of Gaza, very built-up areas. It's impossible to say with any certainty, but there are rules of war. There are rules of war on the Hamas side, but there are rules of war on the Israeli side, and on both sides, in terms of protecting the civilian nature of certain areas. But there are also rules regarding proportionality and avoiding excessive civilian casualties. And when you have an incident like this, it's hard to see what immediate military objective could justify such an attack.
The reason why Channel 4 and every other the reason why a journalist will ask these questions is not because he believes it. It's because he needs the expert to clarify for the average person. This is not for you. This is for your dad, okay? This is for your mom. You need to understand, like, I am already well poisoned, okay? The well has been poisoned 1,000,000 times over for someone like myself. especially when, you know, I am, despite the fact that I look very white, my name is Hassan, okay? Many people are not going to listen to me. Your parents, I mean. Or many people who have heard time and time again how much of an Islamist fundamentalist I am and how much I love terrorism and how I think America bad. That's all I care about is America bad. They're not going to listen to me, which is precisely the reason why. This is precisely the reason why when Channel 4 is conducting itself this way as a outlet of journalism, they are going to ask these sorts of questions. This is the type of shit that you're supposed to be showing your parents who are just like a little bit confused about what's going on and can have their well poisoned. No, poisoning of the well is what I was referencing. I'm not saying well poised. My mom likes your take on Conan.
I mean, this comes after recent statements by both the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. What is the mood where you are now about what is going on in the light of all of that?
The mood is one of numbness, it's one of hopelessness, it's one of exhaustion and despair. People, you know, how long is this going to go on? And this real dread that there will just be more of this unless it comes to an end. I mean, people here are absolutely exhausted. They've got violence, brutal violence impacting every aspect of their life and their being. So really, really desperate times right now for the people of Gaza.
Sam, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Christian.
Hello, I'm Geetha Gurumurthy. Welcome to BBC News Now. And we begin with the Israel-Gaza war. And there is growing condemnation of an airstrike near Rafah, which Palestinian officials say killed at least 45 people, including women and children at a refugee camp. An Israeli government spokesman says the initial findings of its investigation are that an airstrike against a Hamas compound nearby set off a fire which killed the Palestinian civilians. The Palestinian presidency in the occupied West Bank described the strike as a massacre and accused Israel of...
Hassan, we should be making sure Trump doesn't get elected. If you keep on saying untrue things like Israel's an apartheid or genocide, you only help him get reelected, and then you'll see a real genocide that we could have prevented. Hassan, why don't you talk about how Hamas uses human shields to protect their military offensive? It's kind of gross, honestly. I love when the October 7 leavers come back in to chirp. No, this is just like, this is straight up. It's not even blue and on. This person doesn't give a shit about anything. It's just untrue things like Israel's an apartheid. Brother, there are certain things that I'm not going to compromise on. Okay? Do I believe that Donald Trump would be worse than Joe Biden? Absolutely. Whether it be for Palestinians, whether it be for the entire world. However, in an effort to defend Joe Biden, who is currently literally participating in the ethnic cleansing campaign. If you think that I'm going to turn around and lie and act like Joe Biden isn't doing that, or lie even further and act like Israel is not an apartheid, you are out of your mind.
Deliberately targeting displaced people. Egypt has also condemned the attack and called on Israel to implement the order by the International Court of Justice to halt its military offensive in Rafah. French President Emmanuel Macron says he's outraged by the Israeli strikes on Rafah, and Qatar also says it could hinder reaching a ceasefire deal. Well, it came just hours after Hamas said it had launched a rocket attack on Tel Aviv on Sunday. Several were intercepted by air defense systems, according to the Israeli military. Dan Johnson has this report.
This was Israel. If you truly care about Joe Biden not losing to Donald Trump, instead of doing this dumb shit and portraying yourself as a genocide denier, you should probably be smiling and dialing. One, you should probably be trying to pressure the Biden administration to change course on Israel. That's number one. And when you're done with that, you should be calling people to explain to them why voting for Joe Biden would be better. You know what I mean? That's probably a little bit more productive for you, because coming in here, one of the most consistently pro-Palestinian communities and thinking that you're going to make this kind of impact is silly. You just want people to yell at you. You want to possibly clip the reaction. And then you want to go back to your subreddit and be like, see, I did it. I fought the good fight. pick better battles. Yeah, that was like this. This news clipping is from like literally 20 years ago at this point, I think, maybe even longer. I just ignore Hasanabi when he starts spewing buzzwords like apartheid, systemic racism, feminism, genocide, etc. What? Buzzwords? Isn't that a Brianna Wu tweet? No, it's a Bernelli take. I love how personally, intellectually incurious so many people are, that they unironically posture like they're somehow better than these like Republican charlatans, right? Because that's like straight up the take that you would hear from a dude who's like a MAGA supporter. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, these buzzwords like systemic racism, it doesn't exist. Shut up. Meanwhile, this supposedly elite community comprised of like all of the greatest minds you've ever seen that spend an unimaginable amount of time on Reddit have basically dulled themselves and negatively polarized themselves into this position where they're literally operating on anti-intellectual boundaries. Like they just straight up, there's no difference than buzzword like feminism is a straight up anti-intellectual sentiment. That's it. How the do you carry yourself as like beacons of as titans of intellectual honesty that you can only arrive at through debate, while simultaneously saying stuff like, well, that's just a buzzword, man. Genocide is just a buzzword. No, that chatter is just making a joke, or basically repeating what some of my naysayers say. It's crazy though. It's crazy how so many people have fallen into this trap from the pure animosity, operating on pure animosity towards a political commentator, who then turn around and champion anti-intellectual sentiment like that.
Israel's airstrike late last night in southern Gaza. It says targeting senior Hamas figures with precision weapons. But look what it did to the nearby camp where thousands of Palestinians were sheltering. Israel says it was striking legitimate targets in line with international law. But many of these people had already been uprooted many times through this conflict. Suddenly we heard the sound of a missile, Fadi says. We ran and found the street covered in smoke. We couldn't see anything. Then we found a girl and a young man who'd been blown to pieces.
U.S.-made small diameter bomb, SDB GBU 39 fragments visible in the Rafah strike. This is from the rear control section. Good stuff. That's your tax dollars at play, baby. That's Brandon's it's Brandon's weapons right there at play.
Women and children are among the casualties here in what they believed was a safe humanitarian zone. This morning, Israeli drones surveyed the damage as people questioned how this could happen.
We heard a very loud sound and saw fire. The kids were screaming, and all the rooms surrounding us were made out of metal sheets. The sound was terrifying.
We set up our tents here, and it has been targeted. They killed our children and burned our women and elderly in the place they claimed was safe. This is our 7th time being displaced.
Earlier yesterday, Hamas reminded Israelis it remains a threat. Tel Aviv came under rocket attack for the first time in months.
This also is yet another instance where the Israeli war is just a failure, an abject failure. Anytime there's air raid sirens, anytime there's bomb sirens in any part of Israel that isn't like, I guess, northern Israel, it's just another reminder that like the entire ethnic cleansing project was an abject failure. Another thing that is very important to consider, in my opinion, is it's like, I thought you were eliminating Hamas. What happened? Like, it's been 8 months. I don't know if my autism that makes me have blunted emotions towards the conflict, but I will never understand how anybody can see Hamas, not good, condemn, throw a rock against the greatest anti-defense system in the world, and then Israel glasses the Palestinians in response and think that both sides are equal, or if Hamas simply laid down their arms, everything would be chill. Who holds the bigger stick to enact change? Yeah, no, it is that simple. It is literally that simple. It's just Israel has all of the power to stop this. and choose not to.
There are questions over Israel's military strategy and an international court ruling against it.
Israel continues the military action that has been asked to stop. Also, Hamas is launching rockets against Israel, so both sides don't respect the ruling of the court.
This is so funny. Yeah, dude, I know. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I can't believe Hamas is lobbing rockets into Israel still. Oh man, who's really the bigger villain here? I can't really put my finger on it. How many Israelis have been killed since October 7? Oh, that's right. Actually, hundreds potentially of Israelis have been killed since October 7. They were hostages in Gaza, and Israel killed them. So there is that aspect. That is true. I forgot. Because they're functionally Palestinian at that point, because they're inside of the kill zone. They happen to be inside of the kill zone, and therefore they are now functionally Palestinian, and also that means they are Hamas.
Israel says a review will examine this loss of life. But it's Palestinians who count their dead and wonder where in Gaza they can find safety.
Dan Johnson reporting. Well, Avi Hyman is a spokesman for the Israeli government. He explained the objective of the Israeli strike on Rafah.
What happened last night, sadly, there is no moral equivalence between the two things. What happened last night is we went after two high-value Hamas targets, and it appears from initial reports that somehow...
Damn, dude, what happened to that initial report? Oh, shit. Perhaps they should have just waited a little bit longer before coming out and chirping. Except, of course, there's no punishments for this kind of behavior. So it doesn't really matter. Why would you not lie on television if no one fact checks you, or if no one goes, hey, didn't you lie like this before? And like 100 times in the past 8 months? Yeah. I mean, this, like I said, this is a newspaper clipping for like 25 years ago. I don't know exactly when it's from. Israel style of public relations. Sir, a quick guide to Israel's PR methods. 1, we haven't heard reports of deaths. We'll check into it. 2, people were killed, but by a faulty Palestinian rocket/bomb. 3, okay, we killed them, but they were terrorists. 4, okay, they were civilians, but they were being used as human shields. 5, okay, there were no fighters in the area, so it was our mistake, but we killed civilians by accident. They do it on purpose. 6, okay, we kill far more civilians than they do, but look at how terrible other countries are. 7, why are you still talking about Israel? Are you some kind of anti-Semite? Test this against the next interview you hear or watch. Adam Johannes, Secretary Cardiff, Stop the War Coalition. That literally, this is not from like this round, okay? This round of ethnic cleansing. I forget exactly where, when this was posted, but it was like 20 years ago, I think. It's literally from 2001, I think. I've been saying this since day one. They killed a third of Hamas fighters while they recruit a bunch more, destroyed only a third of the tunnels, bombed a bunch of hostages, and strengthened Hamas politically to unprecedented extents. The only achievement is a temporary weakening of Hamas's direct civil/military control. It's not just genocidal, it's completely nonsensical. Well, genocide is completely nonsensical. Think about it this way. The final solution. Think about the final solution for a second. What the are you doing wasting resources while you open up new fronts of the war and get your shit pushed in? Genocide is always nonsensical. That's the whole point. This is why we say fascism is a death cult. This is why we say fascism is like inherently a suicidal ideology. It just makes no sense when you're like, well, what are we doing here? Is a question one must ask. It's from 2014, I think, still long ago. Oh, okay. It's not from 2001. It's from 2014. Still 10 years ago. And still not after October 7. What is this? Liberals keep outing themselves. Me watching Muslims get deported under the new Muslim ban that the 6-3 court upholds. That's sick, man. How are you any different than a Trump supporter? I don't understand why liberals will be like, if you don't vote for Trump, unimaginable. I mean, if you don't vote for Brandon, sorry. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, an untold amount of cruelty will happen to you that Trump will do. And I will enjoy it. Then vote for Trump, dumbass. What do you mean? Like, what are we doing? It makes no sense. What you're saying is that you don't give a shit. For those wondering how Trump will be handling the war in Gaza, protests on college campuses, and efforts to create a Palestinian state, if you get me reelected, we're going to set that movement back 25 to 30 years. One thing I do, any student that protests, I throw them out of the country. You know, there are a lot of foreign students. As soon as they hear that, they're going to behave. Okay. So, again, Brandon level of dealing with the protests, maybe a little bit further. Is that what it is? Okay, that's cool, man. I like that Morning Joe, Joe Brandon, and Donald Trump are almost entirely aligned on this. That's great. Ugh.
How a fire broke out, and that was that sadly took the lives of others. Now I say it appears to because it is under investigation, and the IDF investigates every accident of this nature to see what actually happened.
Well, Shayna Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council in Jerusalem expressed shock at the strike in Rafah.
We are just as shocked as everyone seeing the images coming out of Gaza late last night and early this morning. This is a clear sign of why the implementation of the ICJ's order last week on halting military operations in Gaza in Rafah is so necessary. It's truly unconscionable to think that it's almost 8 months into this, we are still seeing images of women, children, civilians being targeted and killed in such a way.
The head of Gaza's largest United Nations agency, UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, says the strikes in Rafah are a reminder that nowhere is safe in Gaza.
I cannot comment on the casualties because we haven't been able to properly communicate with our team on the ground. I saw images. They are deeply disturbing and horrifying. I think we have been clear more than once. There is no safe space in Gaza.
Will it ever get to a point where the UN security force will be sent into Israel? They can't override the US? No. As long as the United States is a part of the Security Council, okay, a part of the permanent members, the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, there will be no action from the UN, because as the permanent members of the Security Council, they have veto power, and they will always override any kind of action that the United Nations engages in.
Well, we will go back to Dan Johnson in a few minutes for an update on all the very latest on events there.
We have heard that there is this ongoing investigation. What the Israeli military is saying is that they targeted 2 people not in this area, near this area, 2 Hamas operatives, Yassin Rabia and Khaled Najjar, who were part of the Hamas Gaza office, if you like, that ran Hamas in the West Bank. They say it was a legitimate target and that was who they meant to strike at. What now appears from what they are saying is that this area of Tel Sultan, which was full of people in tents, they'd moved there to avoid other areas of war. This wasn't an area, by the way, that Israel had told Palestinians that they should evacuate. But somehow related to that airstrike, it now seems, the fire began. And once the fire began, it was extremely hard to put out. And that's why we saw such awful pictures last night. And we're now seeing that the numbers of dead are rising.
You are such a scumbag. Dude, it's crazy that like this. I mean, here's the good side, bad side. Okay? Here's the good side, bad side. We're going to do that in a second. We'll do every place America is bombed and why to reinforce the America bad thing. The bad side is obviously, France 24 still running defense for Israel. The silver lining here, however, is that they're running out of options. Okay? Because anyone that hears this, anyone that hears them trying to be like, well, it's not the best. They were just like trying to deal with like high-ranking Palestinian leaders, Hamas leaders that work for the, they're in charge of like West Bank operations. And then there was a fire and maybe Israel told them that area was safe, but maybe it wasn't safe. Like, notice how the defense for Israel has moved, okay, notice how the defense for Israel has moved from like, no, they deserve it. This is totally just. Remember October 7 to like, it's just like they didn't mean it. And it's a set of unforeseeable actions that were put in place, like a domino effect that decapitated babies. You know what I mean? That's just a domino oopsie. That's a big oopsie, but it is what it is. Like that that, in my opinion, also, I guess, as the permanent optimist in this situation, in spite of all of the untold cruelty that we have been looking at and staring at for the past 8 months, is still not the worst. Not the worst thing. Israel's biggest coup was always their PR and complicity of the MSM, and they're burning that to the ground at an irreplaceable level. Yes, without complete Western support, Israel cannot conduct itself in the way that it does. Okay, they just can't do that. And because they are so horny to kill as many Palestinian children as they possibly can, while still getting that unconditional support, they are squandering what remains of the political capital that they have, especially with like an entire generation that isn't only getting their news from a complicit mainstream media. How the fuck are you still optimistic? I only have the past 10 years of my professional career as someone who has advocated for Palestinian emancipation to judge what I am seeing now. Okay, can you explain? What is you saying? How could you be so wrong? At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and this is the worst way to try and bait me. Okay, yeah, I can explain to you that at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. Bad bait. Do better. Okay, and if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. That's probably a Turkish chatter, by the way. Even the Turkish chatters are trying to get involved in this. Anyway, mobile chatter. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free. Jacob Johns, thank you for the 5 gifted subs, allowing 5 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. If Palestine has the same military power, don't you think that they will do the same thing? Like if the roles were reversed? Dude, I love this question. One, that's hypothetical, okay? You're purely operating on what you think could possibly happen. And the answer to that is no, and here's why. Because if there was a Palestinian state that was established, and if Palestinians had like the same military power, which is a laughable thing to think about even, okay? Israel would not be able to blow their shit up like this, okay? Because Israel only knows how to kill children and women. That's the reality. And therefore, there would be no need for a counter. Because anytime Hamas actually targets Israeli civilians, which is wrong, and objectively an act of terror for the record. That is my assessment. That is my statement. I will stand by that. I'm not talking about the missiles. I'm talking about like blown up bus stops and shit like that. That is always in retaliation to Israeli violence that is infinitely larger, multiple times larger. Okay? We can't be operating on what ifs when like if your only defense mechanism for Israel is what if Palestinians were just like Israel, then you're basically saying, you know, what Israel's doing is unconscionable, is unjust. like what's the operating principle here? That like, but I'm an Arab and we were raised in school to hate Jews. Okay, dude. Yeah, no, totally. Listen, yeah, totally, dude. I'm a real Arab, and I think what Israel's doing is actually awesome, but we just simply hate Jews because we're anti-Semitic. Here's the 3-minute ad break now, by the way. I'm an Arab with a German username, and I can tell you conclusively that in the Arab school I went to, in the morning, we wake up, we say the Shahada, okay? We pray, and then immediately the first class is Jew hatred class. Second class, also second course that we're learning, also more anti-Semitism class. Third course, just on Mein Kampf. We're learning all the different ways in which one must hate Jewish people. Okay, like fourth class, Protocols of Elder Zion. I'm an IB student, International Baccalaureate student, and I'm getting advanced hatred of Judaism classes. It's so good.
And it's very hard as you...
Hitler Jones, that's funny. Do you know about the Ass Project? Even with that much violence, a lot of Palestinians still don't want to give their own medicine to Give their own medicine to Israelis? We can see that on the YouTube channel. Hitler jokes, that's funny. Okay, dude.
You know, to treat burns, especially in this in these kind of conditions. So we did hear, by the way, from Israel's military prosecutor. She was at a conference and was asked about this, and she said that Israel always regrets any incident where there are civilian casualties, and she also is investigating.
As you say, Iris, reaction then from the Israeli government, from the Israeli army yesterday as well. But there is growing international reaction to some of that footage from Rafah.
That's right. We haven't heard a detailed response from Washington yet. It's early in their day. But in Europe, we are hearing many responses. We heard from Emmanuel Macron, from the French president. We heard from Spain, also hugely critical. You could say Spain and Israel are in the middle of a large spat about this. Very cool relations at the moment. But even Italy and Germany.
On the sidelines, we should say that ever since July 2000, the Palestinian leadership have literally agreed to a demilitarized state and two-state negotiations. Abu Mazen literally agreed to a 5-year IDF presence in the Jordan Valley during the Kerry negotiations. Security concerns have always been bullshit in this context. Yeah, by the way, I think that was a failure of the negotiations process anyway, because I think that is ridiculous. The notion that like you cannot have a standing military immediately means that like you have no sovereignty. And that's precisely the reason why many Palestinians look to at least the last round, the last iteration of the negotiation process is a complete abject failure, because at that point, it's like the settlement project has already launched full throttle, and they see that, and they're getting destroyed in the West Bank, and their leaders are still like, yeah, no, we'll try our very best. Ifatlo. Right. All right. Ifatlo. All eyes on Rafah. How about all eyes on you? This is on you, awoke progressives. The useful idiots of Western media are responsible for the deaths of innocent civilians in Gaza. Without your outcry, Hamas wouldn't have needed to continue to use their own civilians as human shields and to refuse hostage deals and ceasefire deals and prolong this war. Why won't they just lay their arms down and fucking die? That's how she sounds. For people who think that that's not how E. Fartlow sounds, that is actually how she sounds. Okay, I'm sorry. Many people come into this community and say, Hassan, your accents are abysmal, they're awful, maybe even constitute a hate crime. Okay? And then they actually are met with the person that I'm imitating, and they're like, okay, never mind. I actually realized, to me, it sounded like you were making this up, but it does unironically sound like this. So to them, I say, just wait. One day you will find what she sounds like, and you will recognize that I was right all along. History will vindicate me. History will absolve me. Okay? Yes, the effects are devastating. Today, Israel is being bombed from inside of Rafah. Rockets made it as far as Tel Aviv. Israelis had to hide in broad daylight. What do you expect us to do? Not defend ourselves? Not get our hostages back? Not protect our borders? The IDF has made horrible mistakes. Oh shit, she's caving. Why would they? What do you mean? What's a horrible mistake that they've made? Why would you acknowledge that? E. Fartlow is Scottish. Guess what? Most armies do. Every civilian death is a tragic result of war. But why do you keep putting civilians in harm's way? Because you keep being myopically outraged. You keep ignoring the brutalities that Palestinians face at the hands of their own rulers. You keep ignoring the atrocities of October 7th. You keep ignoring the 120 plus hostages remaining in Gaza. You know who's actually not ignoring those hostages? Benjamin Netanyahu, who's doing his very best to kill as many of them as he possibly can, so that it's no longer a political problem for him. He's doing his very best to kill as many hostages as the Hannibal Doctrine intends him to do. You ever hear about the Hannibal Doctrine? It's the best doctrine. I love it. You keep ignoring the facts. This is on you. You're keeping this war alive with your dumb propaganda ceasefire now posts. Oh, it's so bad. She always finds a way to make me laugh. I do personally appreciate Ifatlo for always, in all of this awfulness, in all of this ceaseless, inhumane violence that we're seeing. It's just like she's so stupid that personally is just, she always finds a way to make me laugh. What happened? My yearly ban? It's you. You're helping Hamas win this war. And you're doing exactly, oh shit, inshallah, brother. You are doing exactly what Hamas wants. Yeah. Are you hearing me? All eyes on you, she says. Rogan just banned someone for the first time in a year. Hashtag head mod. Yeah. I told Eve Fartlow she had a receding hairline and she blocked me. It's true. Yeah, by the way, Israel's deadly attack on tent camp confirms there is no safety in Gaza, as survivors say. No matter where we go, we will die here, Palestinian woman says. Israeli leaflets instructed Gazans to head for this camp. Okay? Like, this is supposed to be a safe area. This is supposed to be a safe area. Of course, there is no such thing. Someone just said, I'm from Israel and I admit we're cooked, bro. And they got, I don't know why they got banned. Okay, you want me to look at another E Fartlow take? Okay, hold on. This is the old school one. I was a progressive. I believe in the rights of all, including Jews. The latter got me tarnished with labels. The anti-Semites went to lengths. They made fake tweets by me to prove that I'm a racist, a TERF, an Islamophobe, an ableist. They gave me a hate name. Eve Fartlow. Another phenomenal one is the free parking one. That's another banger. Is Eve even Jewish or Israeli, or is her R referring to Zionist? No, she is. She's Jewish and Scottish. This is another banger. My Jewish friend saw a sign that said free parking and panicked. That is said free Palestine. The Jews are tired. That one is an all-timer because it's like, why are you scared of a sign that says free parking? Or even a sign that says free Palestine. What? There's another banger that I missed. Hamas are better than the Nazis. Better. They've mastered the art of psychological terrorism and global propaganda. If you are screaming about the tragic deaths, dude, you don't have to hand it to the Nazis. You don't have to do that. That's weird. You're Jewish. What? That's insane. That is so weird, man. That is so weird. That's crazy. If you're screaming about the tragic deaths of innocents in Rafah, a result of urban warfare meticulously provoked and planned by a terror regime who gives zero about their own people or anything but death, you have to also say, you have also yet to say a single thing about the atrocities of October 7, which is 8 months ago. Eve Fartlow, or the Jewish people still held in captivity who were raped and murdered solely for the crime of being Jewish, then you have become a part of the regime. You and I will never, ever share a common humanity. You have no humanity. You are a puppet for terrorism. Go to hell. Liberal Zionist rapper does some bad Hasbro. What? Yeah, I read the Batman thing. We're done. In my opinion, the demilitarized state was understandable in the context of two states, as the whole selling point for Israel domestically was long-term security. It was kind of taken for granted post-Camp David, especially since the agreement was to have an international quartet and Arab forces to replace the military. You can definitely criticize it as a case of Israel abusing the PLO's pragmatism to further weaken the PA politically. I mean, that is precisely what it is, especially from the framework of, especially with the way Palestinians see it. Have you seen Zionist propaganda from Big Time Rush? No, because I'm not a person who cares about Big Time Rush, Rogan. What does anybody care about the Zionist propaganda from Big Time Rush except for you, a stan? I cannot believe people were yelling at you for saying Ludwig had a cracker ass take when you yourself are making saltine sentiments previously unheard of in this community. Okay? Oh yeah, there has never been a moment in my entire existence at least over the course of the past 10 years of covering Israel-Palestine, where I ever went to myself and said, let me see what Big Time Rush is saying about Israel, okay? Like, never has that thought ever been inside of my mind. There has never been a moment in my life where I have gone, what does the lead singer, I assume, is that James Maslow or whatever, the guy that you just linked the tweet, where I have thought to myself, like, what does Big Time Rush have to say about Israel's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians? There is no, and the thing is, there's never been a moment where I've cared about what Big Time Rush has to say about any other thing either. You know what I mean? I've never been like, what do they have to say about the so-called peace process, or what does Big Time Rush have to say about, I don't know, tax breaks for the wealthy? Like, what do they have to say about, what do they have to say about healthcare for all? Like, I don't, it's just not in my realm of interest. You know what? I hope people keep posting your armpit here.
Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a beautiful country in the Middle East.
Frogan, this has 200 likes. Big Time Rush fans don't care about this. What are we doing? It's from May 8th. This is so unimaginably hyper specific. It's like if someone came in here and was like, do you know what Blade had to say about Israel-Palestine? I'd be like, no. And I want to maintain that position. I want to maintain my lack of knowledge on what Blade had to say. Drain Gang and their sentiment on Israel-Palestine is so beyond my realm of interest. Like, I don't care. This is ridiculous. But yeah, here, as we were talking about some actually important stuff, the airstrike started a massive fire that quickly tore through the thin tents and makeshift shelters. The health ministry in Gaza said 45 people were killed in the attack. By daylight Monday, the camp was filled with smoking tents, twisted metal, and charred belongings. Murat? Women cried as men prayed over their bodies. Some survivors said that they had come to the camp because they followed a warning on Israeli leaflets telling them to leave Rafah for the humanitarian aid area. So that's another aspect of this that is, that adds insult to injury.
Germany, two countries that are usually more aligned with Israel, and Italy has not voiced any criticism at all during this war. Even they have come out against Israel and said that this is a sign that what's going on in Rafah is unacceptable. And think about the timing, Nadia. What we are seeing is that the ICJ said that Israel should not carry out any military attacks inside the Gaza Strip. That was Friday. And certainly not in Rafah, because it couldn't guarantee the safety of the population there. Israel continued its attack, saying, yes, we can, because so many civilians have been moved. And within 48 hours, you see this terrible incident, which is, if you believe the Israeli military, was actually an accident, but the timing just lets you see that there will be more support for the ICJ now.
And Iris, some news.
Let's get the analysis now.
Also, want to point out something very crazy. Unlike Big Time Rush, here's actually an interesting take on Israel-Palestine from the supreme hater of Islam himself, okay? Emmanuel Macron. You might know him as the President de la République Française. Is that how you say it? I don't know. Outrage by the Israel strikes that have killed many displaced persons in Rafah, he says. These operations must stop. There are no safe areas in Rafah for Palestinian civilians. I call for full respect of international law and an immediate ceasefire, which is crazy because he literally, if given the opportunity, he would be doing Israel to the Muslims in France, honestly. Something to consider.
Now over Sean Bell as to what happened in Rafah. Sean, great to have you with us. So look, Israel says these were precision strikes. What's your take on that?
Yeah, good afternoon, Commander. They came out very quickly with a statement. They used the word precision twice, precision strike and precision intelligence as well. Almost certainly, when we look at the map, that's because the close proximity of the target to a UN facility, which we can see down near you over there. Now, the IDF claim that the tents up here were part of a Hamas headquarters, or at least a Hamas compound there. They're about 200 metres away from the UN facility, but the airstrike, when it did strike, obviously clearly destroyed a lot of these tents. And there's some pretty
free Israel. Yeah, free Israel from Zionism. I agree. Yeah, free Israel from the fascist ideology of Zionism that is rotting the moral fabric of all of the Israelis who defend the ethnic cleansing, dehumanizing them every day. Yeah, free Israel from Zionism, baby. Bring the hostages back. I agree. Bring them back. Stop the Israeli war cabinet from mercilessly slaughtering all of the hostages. Free Israel from Zionism. Free Israel from fascism. Bring the hostages back. A sentiment being expressed on the streets of Tel Aviv right now is literally all for all. Free all the hostages. I think you broke him. Yeah. I mean, he was already broken, I think. Like, it is wild to be simultaneously in support of, like, all of the untold cruelty that the Israeli occupying force is doing in Gaza, and also be like, free the hostages. It's like, bro, you know who doesn't want to free the hostages? Motherfucking Israel. What? 7 in October. The Hasbara bot broke, dude. This has to be a child. I feel like an adult that has the capacity to at least like recall talking points is going to do a better job than this. Yeah, he's saying he's going to turn 7 in the month of October.
Horrible footage associated with that. It's worth pointing out, Geneva Convention perspective, both sides have a legal responsibility to protect all the civilian population, even if those civilians are operating close to a legitimate military target, which might be the case in this case, in which case a rule of proportionality is applied to that. We come back to that later. From my own perspective, you know, I operated as head of a dynamic targeting cell in Kabul for about a year, and we're regularly targeting high-value targets with precision weapons, lots of intelligence. The one key figure, though, was your legal advisor next to you, and the number of times that he wouldn't let the attack be conducted because every feasible measure needs to be taken to try and protect the civilian population on the way. And on face value, the IDF have chosen to attack a target in a very densely populated area. Tents offer no protection whatsoever to a bomb, so we got a lot of casualties. I think the last numbers, we've got 45 killed, 23 of those apparently are women and children.
It might be, we don't know, but we will just believe Israel, whatever they say, even though they have literally lied every single day since October 7. Okay? Every single day. There's just no way to look at this and be like, yeah, no, Israel has lied every single day. For one truthful statement expressed by the Israeli foreign ministry, there is like 100 lies. All the way ranging all the way from like little lies to unimaginable, insane lies like Pallywood shit. That like Palestinians are actually faking their death and destruction.
And 249 wounded. And when you look at the scene there, those figures could well include. And the danger is here, it just reduces confidence in the international community about the way Israel's conducting this war. And just before I came on, the IDF have claimed the incident is being investigated, but the expectation that there weren't going to be any harm done to any non-involved civilians.
Right, OK. So where does this go then next? Because, of course, while the Rafah operation has been suggested and forthcoming, we've heard the allies of Israel saying that they shouldn't do it. The IDF should not go in.
You're absolutely right. And the challenge here, of course, is the IDF hasn't defeated Hamas yet. And that's why Netanyahu's been pretty clear he's determined to go and finish the job. The problem, of course, despite the International Court of Justice saying don't go into Rafah, Americans saying don't go in, international community, there's a whole body of opinion. But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu was determined, and therefore the Rafah offensive is likely to continue. There's been a bit of talk about peace talks that potentially start tomorrow. There may be some progress around hostages, but I have to say it's unlikely they're going to resolve the war itself. And even if the IDF did manage to complete its push through Rafah, would that have destroyed Hamas? Evidence suggests no. Hamas is popping up all over Gaza at the moment, causing all sorts of issues for the Israeli Defence Forces. They've clearly got the means and the intent to continue fighting. And as we've said many times, it's very unlikely there's a military solution to this. Almost certainly the international community to engage to bring this brutal war to an end.
And Sean, a thought from you then on the proportionality and whether...
Yeah, I mean, dude, the framing is also nasty. Like, considering this as a brutal war is just like, again, doing the bidding of the Israeli occupying force. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. It's just, it hasn't been, and it still won't be, no matter how hard you say it. Obviously, that is that's like beyond comprehension for so many people in mainstream media. Like, even those who, even at Channel 4, like when they cover the stuff, they just still say like it's a war with it's a war that has like gone on for too long or whatever. It's not. It's just a slaughter of civilians.
Or not a military force going after its enemy can go after a high-value target, putting in danger the civilians around it.
Yeah, proportionality is a judgment. It's not definitive. If you go about a higher value target, it is accepted there'll be fleeting opportunities and therefore a higher risk can be tolerated. But I have to say, in my military experience, when we target some pretty high value targets, there's nobody in Hamas leadership all the way to the top that would ever be able to legally justify that level of casualties we saw yesterday.
Absolutely. All right, Sean Bell, really appreciate it as always. Thank you.
First, let's just deal with the news of the day. Do you support the government's proposal for a national service? They don't support it either. It's a joke, isn't it? I mean, look.
No, we're not gonna get to England yet. We will get to England. I do have some smoke for England as well, but not yet.